Hello, my name is Akpoyede Igbekuba, the director of Famana Pro, and in this video I'll be talking about angles between 0 degree and 360 degrees. At the end of the video, if you have any question, you can contact me through any of the channels made available. And please, don't forget to subscribe or follow. Enjoy watching. In a Cartesian system, there are 4 quadrants. We have the first, second, third, and fourth quadrant. For the first quadrant, x and y are positive, so you can have a point like 2, 7. For the second quadrant, x is negative, y is positive, so you can have something like -4, 3. For the third quadrant, both x and y are negative, so you can have a point like -1, -2. Then for the fourth quadrant, x is positive, y is negative, so you can have a coordinate like 2, -23. Whenever angles are measured, you can measure them either in the clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction. For positive angles, you measure in the anti-clockwise direction. So you start from the positive x-axis and you move anti-clockwise. You measure it with your protractor or your compass, as the case may be, and you draw the arm of your angle. Assuming the arm is OA, so I'm going to put O and I'll put A here. For negative angles, you measure in the clockwise direction. So you start from the positive x-axis whenever you are measuring negative angles, and you move in the clockwise direction and you stop where you are supposed to stop, meaning the value. Okay, so for this one I just did, it is, let's assume it's -330 degrees. So if it is -330 degrees, then since the arm is the same for both of them, that is the clockwise and the anti-clockwise, this other one will be 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is the same as -330 degrees. The both of them share the same arm. You can measure them differently or separately, but for this example, we are assuming that if this is 30 degrees, the other one will be -330 degrees. For the first quadrant, the range of angles in the first quadrant is between 0 degree and 90 degrees. For the second quadrant, the range is between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. For the third quadrant, the range is between 180 degrees and 270 degrees. And for the fourth quadrant, the range is between 270 degrees and 360 degrees. A revolution is 360 degrees. So one revolution or cycle is 360 degrees. An angle in the first quadrant, let's say theta. So for theta to be in the first quadrant, it means it must be between 0 degree and 90 degrees. This angle can take different forms in the other quadrants. In the second quadrant, theta will become 180 degrees minus theta in the third. And in the fourth quadrant, it will be 360 degrees minus theta. For example, if we take our theta to be, let's say, 30 degrees, it means in the first quadrant, 30 degrees. In the second quadrant, 180 degrees minus 30 degrees, 150 degrees. In the third quadrant, it will be 210 degrees. And in the fourth quadrant, the 30 degrees will be 330 degrees. Okay, so 30 degrees is 150 degrees in the second quadrant, 210 degrees in the third quadrant, and 330 degrees in the fourth quadrant. The trigonometric ratios of angles in the first quadrant gives positive values. For example, if you do sine 30 degrees, an angle in the first quadrant, you do cos, let's say, 70 degrees, and you do, let's say, tan 80 degrees, each of them will give you a positive value as your answer when you use a calculator or a four-figure table. So for the first quadrant, all angles are positive. For the second quadrant, only the sine of an angle is positive. For example, if you do sine 170 degrees, you get a positive value as your answer. If you do tan 150 degrees, or you do cosine 120 degrees, both will give a negative value as your answer. The reason is because in the second quadrant, only the sine of an angle is positive. In the third quadrant, only the tangent of an angle is positive. So, if you do this tangent of any angle in the third quadrant, let's say tan 189 degrees, you are going to get a positive value as your answer. If you decide to do cos any angle in the third quadrant, let's say tan 189 degrees, or you do sine 250 degrees, the cosine and the sine of any angle in the third quadrant will give you a negative value as your answer. Then in the fourth quadrant, only the cosine of an angle is positive. So if you decide to do the sine of any angle in the fourth quadrant, let's say sine 300 degrees, or you do the tangent of tan 310 degrees, you are going to get negative values as your answer. But if you decide to do cos, let's say 275 degrees, you are going to get a positive value as your answer. Here's an example for us to consider. Our first example, find x if sine x equals minus 0.5 for values of x between 0 and 360 degrees. So you have sine x equals minus 0.5. Let's assume there's no minus in front of the 0.5. We are going to assume sine x is ordinary 0.5, so no negative in front of it. So x will be equals to arc sine 0.5 and x will be 30 degrees. Okay, now this is 30 degrees because we assume there's no minus or negative in front of the 0.5. I'm going to go to my four quadrants. Why am I doing that? Because the question says x is between 0 degrees and 360 degrees. In the first quadrant, all angles are positive. For the second, only the sine. For the third, only the tangent. And for the fourth, only the cosine of an angle is positive. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the third quadrant and the fourth one. The reason why I'm going to focus on these two quadrants is because there is a negative in front of the 0.5, and it is only in these two quadrants that the sign of angles are negative. So I have 30 degrees here. This 30 degrees in the second quadrant will be 150 degrees. In the third quadrant, it will be 210 degrees. And in the fourth quadrant, it will be 330 degrees. Okay, so what I'm just going to do right now is I'm going to focus on these two, like I said earlier on. The reason is because of the negative in front of the 0.5. So, since sine x equals minus 0.5, therefore, x will be 210 degrees and 330 degrees. Let's take this example. Solve the equation tan x equals 1.732 for values of x between 0 degree and 360 degrees. So you have tan x equals 1.732. So this makes x to be arctan or tan inverse of 1.732. Then x will be approximately 60 degrees. Then since x range between 0 and 360 degrees, it means in the first quadrant we have 60 degrees where all angles are positive. In the second quadrant where sign is positive, this same 60 degrees will be 120 degrees. In the third quadrant, this same 60 degrees will be 240 degrees. In this quadrant, tan is positive. Then in the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive, and 60 degrees will be 300 degrees. So I'm just going to pick the one that will give me a positive answer, since the value of x, the tan of x, is a positive value. So I'm going to pick this one and the third quadrant. So my final answer will be the positive ones, the ones that will give me a positive answer. So x will be equals to 60 degrees and 240 degrees. Here is another example. Solve for x if 4 sine x plus 5 equals 3 for values of x between 0 degrees and 360 degrees. So you have 4 sine x plus 5 equals 3. So this will be 4 sine x equals, if plus 5 is moved to the other side, it becomes minus 5. So you have 3 minus 5. 4 sine x equals minus 2. Because 3 minus 5 is minus 2. So sine x, if you divide both sides by 4, you have minus 2 over 4. Then, if you reduce minus 2 over 4 to the lowest form, that is 2 here 1, 2 in 4 will give you 2, you are going to have minus half. Now, sine x equals to minus half. This looks like our first example. So I'm just going to write the answer. So x will be equals to 210 degrees and 330 degrees. How did I arrive at these answers? You can rewind the video and look at the first example again. If you are to look for the values of negative angles, you need to consider the following. The sine of a negative angle is equals to minus sine the angle. The cosine of a negative angle is equals to the cosine of the angle. Then the tangent of a negative angle is the negative of the tan of the angle. So assuming I ask you, or you are asked in an assessment or an examination, to find sine minus 55 degrees, what you simply do is you write sine minus 55 degrees to be equals to minus sine 55 degrees. So you use your 4-figure table and you do this. What is sine 55 degrees? If you use your calculator or your 4-figure table to do sine 55 degrees, you are going to get 0.8192 in 4 decimal places, and you put the minus in front of it. Okay? Similarly, if I ask you to do cos, let's say the cosine of minus 55 degrees, it's just going to be ordinary cos 55 degrees. So if you do cos 55 degrees, you are going to get what? 0.573 36. They are not going to be minus there because the cosine of a negative angle is just the cosine of the angle. And this answer is the same as cos 305 degrees. Take note of that. Now, why is it positive? Okay, let me quickly mention why it is positive. Remember I said earlier on that negative angles are measured from the x-axis in the clockwise direction. So if you want to do minus 55 degrees, you are going to start from the positive x-axis and you go clockwise. So if you go clockwise, you will discover that 55 degrees, that minus 55 degrees, will fall in the fourth quadrant. So because it is in the fourth quadrant, it's going to be positive. That is why we have just 0.5736. And this value is the same as cos 305 degrees. Why 305 degrees? Because if I want to do the positive of this arm, let me call it OA, it means I will need to go anti-clockwise. And if I do that, the angle I'm going to cover will be 305 degrees. So 305 degrees and 55 degrees are the same. Okay, so for minus 55 degrees, you move clockwise and it falls in the fourth quadrant. And that value, if you are to move anti-clockwise, will be 305 degrees. Okay.